Many of us, prayer can be super simple that we forget that others don't even know what prayer is. So if that's you today and you don't know what prayer is, or you don't know how to pray, you're going to want to stay to the end of this video. Because in this video, I'm going to be explaining first off what prayer is, how to do it, and I'm going to be debunking some myths about like things that people often believe about prayer that honestly aren't even true. So if you want to hear all that, all you have to do is sit back and relax and let me explain. Prayer in and of itself is basically just communication with God. When you pray, it's basically like you have your friend right here and you're talking to him, but you're actually talking to God. It's basically just like a conversation with God. You can do it in your mind, or you can do it out loud. You can do it alone or with other people. But some of the main uses for prayer are, first off, to let your requests be made known to God. That's something that's talked about biblically. I'll try to put the verse up here. And then also, it's there so that you can thank God. When God has worked in your life or given you blessings in your life, then you can use prayer to thank God. God, thank you for this, thank you for that. But in all prayer, no matter if it's thanking God, asking him for something, or just talking to him, it all strengthens your relationship with God. If you have a friend who you don't talk to, that's not really even your friend. But if you want to have a relationship with someone, then you need to actually talk to them. So if you want to build a personal relationship with Jesus and strengthen that relationship, then you need to talk to Jesus through prayer. Also, by the way, it's so much better to pray while focused, just intentionally doing it one thing at a time, just praying instead of doing prayer at the same time as doing something else. That's why you'll often see people bowing their head and closing their eyes like this so that they don't get distracted, so that they can focus solely on prayer. So yes, of course, it is way better to pray while focused. But that doesn't mean that you can't do other things while you're praying. For example, if you're driving, of course, you don't want to just stop in the middle of the road and bow your head and clasp your hands and do like this, because you'll either stop in the middle of the road and clog up traffic, or you'll crash. So maybe your only option at that point is just to pray to God while also driving. But remember, if you're doing something like that, like praying while driving, remember to stay present in the moment with God. The only reason why I say not to be multitasking while praying is because it makes it harder to be present with God. So if you're doing something like driving while praying, that's totally okay. Just remember to stay present with God. Don't let driving distract you from being truly intentional with God. But if it's something like, yeah, I could pray later, or I could pray now and do this thing later, but I just want to save time, that's not really something I would recommend. I would recommend doing something first, doing the thing you need to do first, and then praying, or vice versa. Praying first and then doing the thing you need to, not doing both at the same time. I probably shouldn't have to say this to you because you're smart, but if you're praying while driving, please don't get in a wreck. Don't get distracted from driving so much so that you get in a wreck. Please don't do that. But that's honestly it. Prayer is just communication with God, no matter if it's out loud or just in your mind, whether it's with others or just alone by yourself. So now let's get into some myths that are commonly believed but are actually not true about prayer. A lot of people think that they have to pray in a specific way, like ye or thou or shout, and like the more bigger words that you use, the more the ye's and they's you use, then the more God will hear you. But that honestly just isn't true. Yes, of course, be reverent whenever you're talking to God, but don't feel like you have to be pressured into talking like a King James Bible or whatever while you're praying. You don't have any specific way you're required to be praying. Just pray in the way that makes you feel most comfortable. And also, prayer doesn't have to be super drawn out either. It can only just be like a few words. God doesn't hear you more or less depending on how long or short your prayer is. God hears you no matter if it's a few words or a few paragraphs. Something I've also heard is that some people feel like they have to say the Lord's Prayer every single time they pray, like the prayer that Jesus lines out in Matthew 6, 9 through 13. A lot of people think they have to say that word for word every single time they pray, but honestly that isn't true. When Jesus says, this is how you should pray, he isn't saying, this is what you should pray every single time you pray. But he's really saying that this is a good example of how you should pray. He's setting an outline. He's not saying you have to say that word for word every single time you pray. Like if you had a friend who every single day he came up to you, said the same thing, and just left. And then the next day, he came up to you, said the same thing, and then just left. That wouldn't be a relationship, that would just be a ritual. So instead of saying the Lord's Prayer over and over again, or once a day or whatever, instead be intentional with your prayer. Say things that you truly mean in your heart, not just in your mouth, and not just repeating something, just heaping up an empty phrase like Jesus talks about. Another misconception I feel like people have is that we don't need to pray when we don't need God. Like, of course, I totally understand that bad circumstances can push us into more prayer. But that doesn't mean when times are good, we should just totally forget about prayer or not pray at all. That's far from what we should do. Instead, we should use that time, the good times, in order to pray for other things. Instead of praying for, God, help me out of this situation, you can pray in thankfulness that God has taken you out of that situation. You can pray that God would keep you away from negative situations. You can pray for sanctification, that God would grow your faith. You can pray for others. You're never going to run out of things to pray for, you know what I'm saying? You can always be praying, no matter if times are good or times are bad. And the last misconception that I want to clear up is that prayer doesn't work or that God doesn't respond. If you think this, you either, first off, haven't been praying for that really long enough, or you aren't looking in the right places for answers from God, or you aren't praying in a proper way. If you're using God as a genie, God give me this, God give me that, God isn't ever going to respond, or at least his response is going to be no. If you're asking for a sign that God's real, then he won't answer that either. Matthew 16:4 tells us that as well. But if you're praying in a way that honors God, not just in a way that you're trying to get stuff for yourself, and you haven't felt a response from God, maybe that's because you aren't looking in the right places. For example, if you're praying for patience, instead of giving you patience straight up, God might put you in a situation that tests and grows your patience. So maybe instead of looking for a direct response straight up in your ear, maybe you should look around you for the responses that God has already given you. And to get help with this, looking for and finding the responses that God has given you, what you should do is pray that God would guide you to see how he has answered your prayers. Don't give up on prayer just because you haven't seen a response from God. Something I actually personally deal with sometimes is I forget to thank God for the things that I've prayed for. Like, he's answered prayers before, and I've totally forgotten about that problem, even though he's healed it from me. So I forget to thank God in prayer. I forget to thank God for answering my prayers, even when, because I forget that I even had that problem because God took it away. So in a nutshell, that's prayer. Just simply communicating with God, no matter if it's in your mind or by speaking or whatever. If you want to get a bit more advanced with your prayer, I've actually linked a video in the description that I made. It's about some tips that you can use to improve your prayer life, but that isn't necessarily super necessary right now. If you're just starting out praying, just get in the habit of praying daily. I hope and pray that this video has impacted at least one person. If it has impacted one person, 1% in a positive way, then that's a win in my eyes. If you liked this video, I want to pressure you to click a like button or click a subscribe or a follow. What I want you to do instead is to pray to God in thankfulness that he's spoken through me through this video and that he's put this video onto your screen for a reason. But if you want to go that extra mile, what you can do is click the share button and send this to someone that you know would be helped by it, because that's sharing the gospel. I'm not saying that to boost the algorithm or whatever. I just want the gospel to be reached to as many people as possible. If you have any questions about what I said in this video, if you have anything to add to the message of this video, or if you want to point out a mistake that I made, because I'm human, I know I make mistakes, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I'm able to read every single one since I'm a smaller channel right now. And with that, peace out and God bless.